Oh, man. All right. So, this tech shot we got, guys.
What's up?
Is it too late for the environment? As in, we fucked this place up.
I mean,
I'm gonna be completely honest.
We can just
with
draw
you.
it into what we were talking about in the last, shot. Just the fact that people don't even believe there's climate change.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
a thing
God.
too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's totally a thing. And globally too. That's the scary part. It's like humanity. So I'm gonna start it off this way. What was it? 11,000 scientists. 11,000. That's got to be all of them. I mean, 11,000.
Ain't that many scientists?
How many scientists do you know?
Is this specifically climate change scientists?
I don't know.
Okay.
But like you said, I trust them more than
right.
Hoboken. Goddamn.
Then Billy Bob. No, 11,000 scientists have predicted that we will suffer what is unseen pain or something to that effect if we do not change course soon.
Right.
When in regards to how we treat the environment. When those type of things they're not just warning signs, bro. That's somebody clubbing you over the head, telling you to wake the hell up. Yeah, and it's the guys who are supposed to club you over the head and wake the head. It's like normally we hear that kind of stuff from conspiracy theorists and people who are like, just frantic about it. But no, the guys who study this stuff.
The guy I paid to tell me if things are going wrong is now telling me that is going wrong.
The sentry on the wall is ringing the hell out the bell, and nobody is listening.
I don't believe him.
And the switch just doesn't go off,
exactly.
right? People are just like, oh, okay.
Paul Revere is like, the British are coming, and people are like,
nah.
I don't believe that. I don't believe it.
At all.
He's talking about the British.
Exactly. And so we have this issue. We have issues of we're starting to find microplastics in our food supply.
Yes. Yeah.
Microplastics are starting to find their way into our food supply. And then, of course, there's the massive junk pile that's floating in the Pacific. But there's several junk piles that are floating across most of the world's oceans. And guys, like the world is starting to give us obvious signals.
Yes.
That's like, it's being strained at this point. The wildfires.
Everything's on fire. Come on now.
The hurricanes. We've had more. I think it's wild how quick this happened because I wasn't even paying that much attention to it. But it's like we've had so many storms that we've ran out of names for the season, and we're now using Greek alphabet
to name storms because we ran out of names, y'all. Regular names.
That happened.
Come on, man. I don't have time.
We ain't got no Zelda. We ain't got no
Bruh, come on now. Y'all want to go ahead and call it? Yeah, we've run out of time. Probably it's probably too late. We can't. I mean, look.
That's what Andrew Yang said.
I think you brought up a point that was very. Have we run? Okay, so there is a what was it? I think this week they unveiled the clock, right, in New York.
The doomsday clock?
Not the doomsday clock, but the new environmental clock, right?
Oh, they have an environmental clock. Okay.
So so they unveiled the new clock in New York, and it basically has the time that it's so they were like, it's a little more optimistic than a doomsday clock, but it basically shows a time that if we don't make basically a paradigm shift by the time this clock runs out, then we're then we can't turn back. Now the clock's time is about 7 years. So you're talking about a 7-year period that they're saying, like, look, at the end of this 7 years, when that's up, if we haven't made some kind of large scale shift, we'll be at the point of just no return at that point. We can after that we can do everything we can, but if we have not made a large enough shift when this clock runs out, then we're at the point of no return and we can't come back. Jesus. Now, the point that I'm saying that you made is, what are the odds that we get everybody in the world to agree that that's a problem?
Right. I mean, it's
but I mean, the last.
And y'all, she made this point before we started recording, so that's
well,
sorry.
I mean, we have to get the general public on board, so the elected officials will make it an actual issue, and the elected officials all need to come together and say, hey, like, as the world, we're gonna work on climate change, but that's just not going to happen.
Well, the UN tried to do that.
I mean,
and
come on.
What was it? The last climate accord, the Paris Climate Accord.
And somebody
Mandy
removed us from the climate accord.
Somebody
I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want him to get no more publicity. But it rhymed with stump. Okay, I'm just saying somebody decided to remove us from this accord.
Right.
That was.
I don't know why.
But I also think that there are a ton of like really interesting technologies that are coming out that are not being invested in. Like how many like cool things have you seen that could like cut down on emissions that are not just being invested in because that costs money and that takes time. And if we actually spent money on those things, we would be in a better place. Like I saw this lady making like clothing out of algae, and it came like 0 emissions out of that, right? But who's doing that? Nobody.
But also I think,
and at such a cost, because you know this is such an economic problem. You know, she can make these clothes out of algae, and that will be awesome. But it's almost like when electric cars came out, and it's like electric cars are awesome. The average person can't afford a new electric car, so what do we do to if everyone has to do this and everybody has to be on board? There are people who would be on board but can't afford to be on board. It's like eating healthy.
That and also it causes a new problem, right? So like the amount of electric pool, the energy pool that the cars have, because they have to be charged, goes back to the coal power plant that we're still using. We need to flip the fusion, like we talked about last episode. We talked about fusion energy. But what's concerning is like there are some very fundamental human things like energy production and food that produce so much byproduct. For as far as the environment, as far as harming the environment. I was on some horses. I was on some horses in Yellowstone last week. And I had never been on horses before, but the amount of fart that those things, methane, those things exhibit is insane. And it was like, dude, like every 2 seconds, it's like, bruh. But I say that to say this: cows do the same thing. And so like we're such a meat oriented, or at least the United States, or at least Western civilization is such a meat oriented, cow oriented, beef oriented society. That like, I mean, the amount of methane gas that we're producing just from that alone is really, I mean, we would have to shift that entire. We
would have to shift the diet of America, of the Western world. Come on now.
But you know what's also interesting? The green industry. It's actually like they say, oh, these products are like biodegradable and they're made out of like all these great ingredients, like natural ingredients, but a lot of them actually use a lot of like emissions to get here. I mean, they have to be shipped all the way from wherever they're made to like cut down on costs because we're
we're talking about a shift that humanity can't make. Right. I'm the cold realist. We're not gonna make it as far as making the shift. Now, what happens to us after that point is I don't know, but I have no faith that we as humanity will get on board enough to make the shifts that we need to make to alter our course. Because I mean, we're talking about human organization, really. Right? I mean, like we're talking about, you know I love urbanism. Cities. You know, it's like we're talking about needing to be denser. We're talking about needing to use our resources better. To produce food more, locally. The amount of shit, I mean, how is that going to happen? I mean, we're not even talking about just major cities like New York. How could New York even feed itself at this point? How could we reorganize the region of New York to feed itself? We can. You can. And so, so really, unfortunately, man as a creature, we just bump our heads a lot. And this is going to be one of those situations where we bump our heads. And it sounds light, but there will be a lot of suffering in that, like the scientists have said. There will be much suffering in that because we simply, it's something about like objective thought and long-term thought that we just don't freaking. It's just not something that occurs naturally for humanity. And this isn't even talking about. This is talking like Chany was talking about, like, can we get everybody? And so we're speaking about nations who are aware of the problem. There are nations who aren't even like. This is the last thing on their mind.
And you're going to talk. I mean, at that point, you're even just talking about just the sheer greed. I mean, the amount of people who would need to be on board. I mean, like think about that. You look at Elon Musk, and you're just sitting back like, there's a lot you could have probably done to help this problem, but you decided to build a rocket ship. and because that's rocket ships are cool,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And
What are the people
space,
having?
and space, bro. Y'all like
Yeah.
space. Everybody loves space. You know what I'm saying? It's like all of you guys could have done something great, but instead, you know, it's like Jeff. You know, you could have done something to fix this problem, but you are worried about building another Amazon facility, and isn't that great? I'm creating jobs, right? It's like cool word.
And this is my last, because we're getting that wrap.
Yes.
My last piece is like, yeah, man, we're gonna bump our heads, and how we're gonna bounce back from that, I have no clue. But it's you know, nature's gonna teach us more than we probably could have taught ourselves, and it's sad because there is some very bad stuff that can happen. I mean, even when we look at like places like India, you know, people bathing in polluted waters and stuff like that. It's dangerous. I mean, I've seen so many documentaries where, you know, they're washing off and it's jugs and bottles and waste everywhere, and it's like, we can't sustain that.
No.
And that's not the only place that happens.
No.
It happens all over the globe.
Yes.
And so we can't sustain that, guys, and just brace for impact.
Come on now.
My last word is that we have to tear the system down, because, you know, we got countries around the world that are feeding like the West, that have cash crops, that are you know, that have their palm oil crops, that have their rubber trees, and that's all they have. They cannot sustain themselves anymore. And like places like in the Pacific and Samoa, they export everything, and then because they're a poorer country, they cannot import like the good foods, and and the healthy kind of foods that people actually need to live healthy. And they have the most overweight population in the world.
Wow.
Because of that, and these are countries that have rich soils that used to be able to feed themselves and more, but because of the trade system that we have, because of the fact that, you know, just the way that everything is organized in this like export import that doesn't actually benefit developing countries.
Yeah, I've always said this. It's a weird thing, because as someone who does believe in globalism, and I am a mixed market advocate, you know, leaning capitalist. It's like, I have noticed the problem of like, there are nations that are so far behind technologically. I think they should stop trying to keep up, because that's actually causing much more stress than if you were to just kind of detach and develop and use your resources as you need and grow from there, you know. But that's a whole nother piece.
Yeah, that is.
Shut down.
Because I was like, I could go on about this. I was like, I got to shut up, because I'm going to.
I didn't know y'all was such environmentalists.
Exactly. I wanted to be like,
y'all care about
and
the planet
another
like
thing.
that?